This replacement fender blends in pretty good. Definitely happy with the results. How's it going, my Saab friends? My name is Gary and this is my channel Weakest to Weeks. If you're a first time viewer, I appreciate you clicking on the video and definitely consider subscribing. No, this video isn't about the only vehicle in the garage right now, my Volvo XC60 Artisan. It is going to be, in fact, a Saab video, and specifically it's going to be a video about how to replace the fender on your new Gen 9.3, 2003 and up, but specifically a bit geared more towards the facelifted models 2008 and up, because simply that's the vehicle that we're going to be installing this fender on, is my 2008 Saab 9.3 Aero. Now, this fender is taking an exceedingly long time to get. It's a story for another day about how I got it, how long it took to get, and why I needed it in the first place. But just know my current fender is pretty rusty and crusty and overdue for a replacement. So today I'm going to show you how to replace the fender on your new Gen 9.3. The reason why this has been such an incredibly long journey is because I've been holding out for the right fender to find a factory painted laser red used fender. So the simple fact is that any vehicle make and model with age, the paint fades just due to the sunlight. So if you were to buy a random fender in any color and have it professionally painted, say in this laser red, and then put it on the vehicle, say this was my Saab, then you have a freshly painted fender and then aged paint everywhere else. So then what you have to do is get everything blended. So with waiting for a used factory painted laser red fender, in theory, this will be the closest match to put on the vehicle without having to blend everything else. But again, that is in theory. And another thing about this fender is, one, it came off a convertible, so I don't know yet at this point in time if this will actually bolt up to the vehicle. I'm pretty sure whether it's sedan, four-door, or convertible, the two-door, I'm pretty sure the fender is the exact same. And the second point that's a little more concerning for me at this point in time is the simple fact that it has this aftermarket pinstripe on it. When I purchased it, I thought it was a decal, but it is in fact paint. And running my nail over top of it, I would say that this is probably original paint, and then somebody thereafter added this pinstripe. So what that means, it is not under the clear coat. So I believe what we can use is some lacquer thinner in moderation, just to remove that pinstripe and not damage the clear coat or paint underneath it. Unfortunately, this is not going to be a simple unbolt, rebolt, 10-minute job. There's hardware at the top that needs removed. There's a hidden bolt behind the headlight. This is my US spec 9.3. We're going to be swapping out the passenger side fender, but regardless of what side, there's going to be some hardware behind the headlight that we need to remove. Unfortunately, to remove the headlight, we got to yank this bumper off. There's hardware at the top. There's stuff at the bottom that needs removed. There's bolts in front of each wheel on both sides. Opening up the front door, there's a bolt right here. And then, like a bad infomercial, but wait, there is more. There's a bolt right here, so we got to loosen the rocker. There's a screw here, some plastic push pins to loosen this up to get access to that bolt, to swap it out, and then add in some electrical with swapping out the marker lamp, but that should be no big deal. In this video, I'm not going to show the full-on procedure of removal and reinstallation of this front bumper assembly, simply because, use the links in the description, I have an in-depth video that's extremely helpful about the procedure for that. Quick tip though, turn your wheel all the way to one direction. That way you have much better access to the screws that hold on this front bumper from inside this inner wheel liner. And I highly recommend jacking the vehicle up to get better access to the bolts that hold it from underneath. But if you're like myself, this is the multiple time you've done this, you should be able to just stick your arm down there, use a 1/4 inch ratchet in an 8mm socket, And in case you're wondering, that is the hardware just to remove the front bumper. Now, because I'm only removing this front bumper to get access to pull the headlight, to get access to the bolt, I'm simply just draping this or just setting this front bumper while it is disconnected, setting it directly onto the ground. I don't want to remove it completely because my vehicle has the optional headlight nozzles for the washers. And if I wanted to remove this completely, there's actually an electrical plug that I already removed because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but there's also a hose that goes from the washer tank to these nozzles, so if you were to detach that, it then leaks out the fluid. But in case you're a longtime subscriber and you watch my DIY aftermarket upgraded intercooler install, this is all looking awesome, doing great. DO88 charge pipe still looking good. I got the full-on kit, full bolt-on this car, but that intercooler doing awesome. This headlight is pretty straightforward for the most part. We have an 8mm bolt right there, 10mm, another 10mm just out of the camera frame. But to remove it, I'm going to try out this Craftsman 3/8 swivel 3/8 ratchet. And while this is totally unnecessary in this application, I have briefly used this in the past on my truck that I just ended up getting. And this is awesome in tight spots, and I just absolutely love this thing. It's not a paid sponsorship, but I'll link in the description in case you're in the market for a pretty cool, flexible ratchet. Set that to the side for safekeeping. And would you look at that? We have access now to this 10mm bolt and then also this additional 10mm bolt that holds on this horn bracket. All right, with the door partially cracked open, you can get access to this Torx screw. That is a T30 Torx. I want to protect this door. I'll even add a little bit to this fender, even though we're replacing it today. This we don't have to remove completely because this fender, the bracket's like a U, so it just simply needs to slip out. Next up on the list, got to remove this 8mm rocker screw. By rocker, I mean rocker panel. But also with this angle, you get a clear picture of why exactly I need to replace this fender. We have another one a little farther down in here that needs removed as well. There's a few plastic push pins underneath this rocker, so we can just kind of pull that down and they fall right out. Here for reference is the lifting puck. So we just kind of follow along. We don't need to remove them all, but we're going to remove at least 2 of them. And here's my hand. I'm just going to pull down. It falls right out. And that's what it looks like. Inside the store, we need to take further steps to loosen up this rocker. So we have this weather stripping right here. It's in a channel, and it's not the easiest thing to get out if it's never been removed before. So we're going to use the combination of the trim removal tool and then just kind of shoving fingers in here and pinching it and just pulling it outwards. We don't need to remove it completely. We just need to remove it enough to get access to T25 Torx screw right here. I actually decided to remove 2 more of these T25 Torx screws, so I ended up removing 4 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, basically stopped at the end of where this passenger door starts. So we're back to the T30 Torx for unbolting this lower fender bolt, and unfortunately, unlike that top one where we just had to loosen it up, this one we have to remove completely. Removal of this marker light assembly, extremely simple. So again, this is the passenger side, so what we're going to do is simply push it forward, it'll kick the back end out, and then back it out towards the door, and then it's just simply fishing out the wires. Now for the keen-eyed viewers, this is a sequential LED marker assembly, and for those that have been subscribed for a while, well, you already know that this has been installed for some time. So if you're new, click up top here or use the link in the description for the installation of this aftermarket marker assembly. But I just simply need to undo some of this electrical tape that I did to protect it and then remove it. Lastly, to remove this front fender, we have a 10 mil and then two T30 Torx screws. And I have been following an order of operations. There's a reason why I'm doing these 3 bolts last, because they're the topmost bolts. If we ended up doing these first, then this fender would have been flopping outwards and have been more of a nuisance than anything. So again, we have a 10 mil, and I'm going to try to be as careful as possible because you actually see these screws or bolts right whenever you open this hood up. So we definitely don't want to mar these up and chip all the paint off of it. And right outside the original camera frame, there's an additional 10 millimeter bolt right here that I forgot about. Now on to the two T30 Torx. Then of course, this wouldn't be a Saab without an additional plastic push rivet. Now for the moment of truth is pretty much just shimmying this thing out of here. And there's a lot of different points that this thing is sitting in. One thing that really tripped me up was this little plastic piece. So here is that fender we just removed. There's that rocker bolt, and actually this plastic piece goes right into here like such. And this is actually what's holding that weather stripping in the rocker panel into this piece that I totally forgot to originally remove, but I was able to get it out without breaking the clip. Here's that little plastic piece. Here's that rocker weather stripping. This piece runs all the way to here, and then it's pretty simple if you do what I did and you did it last minute. There's actually a void underneath here, so we just need to fish it up through and get it into this hole. That's all that there is. So don't be like me, don't forget to undo that. If you're wondering what the front of this vehicle looks like without the front fender on it, you basically have this inner structure that has built-in crumple zones. So if you were to get in an accident, this kind of squishes and absorbs a lot of the energy so it doesn't transfer all the way to the cabin and into the driver and passenger. But everything else behind here, while the fender was rusty, this is all in great shape. It's definitely dirty, so I want to take a little bit of time to clean that up, and especially down here, which is extremely gross, and for whatever reason there's a bunch of crud that stays right there. So we're going to clean some of this stuff up, and now after that we'll straighten out a couple of these little brackets that were damaged in transit. This one a little more bent, which is a bit more concerning, but this stuff is really easy to bend back in place. Putting this back is going to be quite the balancing act. There's multiple points that this has attached to, obviously up top here, below, 4 bolts up top here, then of course the nose. The top bolt up there, sliding it into that channel, not pinching my fingers. I have some bolts handy. I got 10 mil up top there. Torx on to front. So for now, we're just loosely tightening these bolts, and then I'll push it back into place to fully tighten everything. The bolts are loosely into place all across this fender, And even though these are the original hardware for this car, completely different fender off an entirely different car, based on the paint marks, we get a pretty good idea of where this fender needs to lie whenever we fully tighten these bolts. So to get the best gaps, I'll go ahead, line this stuff up, tighten all these top bolts, and then slowly close the hood, slowly close the door, and of course after tightening this bolt in here as well, in the rocker, but tighten that down based on the paint marks, and then that should give us a pretty good idea of where this fender needs to go. That's lined up beautifully. So now we'll close this hood and check the gaps. So important gap, fender to the hood. That is nice and consistent. I already took a sneak peek, looked at the other side. That is perfect. And then another important gap, obviously, is the fender to the door gap. And same kind of thing, nice and consistent. Another thing to test, open and close the door. Make sure you don't have any interference between the two because you can damage the door or damage the fender you just put on here. This rocker is going to be a bit tricky to get in place. A couple things we need to do. On the rocker itself, there is a tab that is facing right now towards me. So whenever we get this thing pushed up, it actually locks in behind the fender right there. Then if you notice, there's a tab hanging down straight down to the ground in the fender, and that's going to go in a channel. So a couple of things needs to happen. This rocker needs to get pushed in like that, but then also get twisted at an angle, go up, and then twist back towards the camera. So basically this way, up, and then back down, and of course the different bolts and stuff. Now that the rocker to the fender is attached, or at least clipped into place, one thing that keeps beating me up that I keep forgetting is this darn piece of weather stripping that is the end of this weather stripping right there. So I forgot this whenever I remove this fender. Before you fully tighten this fender down, as you're putting it into place, hook in that piece of weather stripping as you're maneuvering this thing into place. Otherwise, it's an absolute nightmare doing it when it's fully bolted down. 4 T25 Torx screws going back in place. Gonna loosely start all 4 of them first before we tighten anything fully down. Then underneath we have to put in these 2 plastic push pins back under here. If you're wondering about this random foam piece, I believe this is sound deadening. So basically, it goes like this. Have the fender, have the door, goes in between the two, right in this void right there. And I believe this prevents some of this road noise from going in the cabin. And here's the foam piece installed right there, and it travels all the way up, going from the bottom rocker to the tippity top of the fender. Headlight is ready to go back in, and I must say, years ago, many miles later, after refinishing this headlight using some 2K clear, this thing looks awesome still. If you want to see that video, link is in the description. Got the short 10 mil. Got this goofy self-tapping 8 mil looking thing. The long 10 mil goes right down here. And of course you have to test this thing out. Lashing eye works. And if you're wondering as far as compatibility, convertible fender on, say, like a sedan, this 4-door, or say the Combi, the 5-door, one main difference, even though this thing bolts up perfectly fine, and I found an interesting difference, is simply with this little plug. So this plug is drilled through. I don't know why, and I don't know, I've never honestly noticed it on any of the other ones. So I don't know if it's specific to the convertible that they don't have this plug, or if it's just on this particular model. Hard to see, but that driver's side has that same exact plug. So I don't know. Comment down below if you know exactly what this plug is for, and what models have it and what models don't. Replacement fender is fully on, front bumper reinstalled. Car is one big happy unit, but before we mark this project as fully complete, I ended up giving this car a nice bath, a wash, and now we need to protect the paint. I live in the United States, specifically Ohio, so we're going to be rolling into winter here. But what we're going to be doing to protect the paint is using some ceramic spray by my friends at Torque Detail. They recognize the fact that this car, time and time again, sits out on my driveway. There's a tree nearby, and it dumps a bunch of garbage onto this car, so it's very important to protect it. So a shout out to them for sending me out this ceramic spray. To use, there's actually a little button on the neck. You just push over, and it says on, and then you get a spray. Use one microfiber towel to kind of buff it into the surface, and a second microfiber to clean any excess. This dries in minutes, but full cure is 5 hours. And definitely do this in a cool setting. You don't want to be doing this in the direct sunlight. I didn't do a tape line, but here there's actually kind of a definitive line where so far I sprayed this left section of the hood, and then here on down I have yet to spray. So already you can see the difference of where it was sprayed and where we have yet to spray. Just finished up the coat of ceramic spray on my Saab here, and I by no means am a detail expert. And this is the first time I've ever used any ceramic spray on a vehicle. I've used various waxes in the past, and depending on the brand, some are a bit more difficult to buff out of the paint than some others. But this is pretty darn dummy free. You literally just spray it on, use one microfiber towel to buff into the surface, have a second on standby to buff out any excess. Now I did go heavier on the hood, fenders, and the front bumper. Those are the areas that take a brunt of the impact and need the most amount of protection. And then the rest of the paint did kind of a thinner coat. And what I ended up with is about 1/3 of the bottle used of this 8-ounce bottle. So there's plenty left over to do additional coats or to use next year. Or if you're like myself, you have 4 vehicles and 2 motorcycles, well, there's plenty other stuff that can be ceramic coated. But I will say this stuff is incredibly forgiving. I slicked this stuff on, no mercy. I got it all over the rubber, some plastic trim, and I've had waxes in the past that automatically, after getting wax on it, kind of turn that whitish color, but that is not the case so far with this ceramic spray. So aim to get it on the paint, avoid the windows. If you get it on plastic and rubber, not the end of the world. And then I'd probably avoid the rubber of the tires, things like that, because there's specialized products for that. As far as conclusion for this video, I'm more than ecstatic with the results of this fender replacement. I'm sure you can critique it and point out in different sunlight and different angles the differences in the paint, but quite honestly, I think this was the route to go to hold out for a factory painted fender, albeit across the country, and could have been in a different circumstance, more in the sun, more in the garage. I have no idea, but overall, I think this is the best route to go without having to blend the paint, kind of pay that premium to get a freshly painted fender, and then to blend everything to make it look perfect. So I think just kind of out of the box for bolting on a factory painted fender, I think we made out pretty good. And The part I'm more ecstatic about is the fact that we no longer have any rust right there. So I'm definitely pleased. If this video helped you out, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop a comment down below. And I hope to catch you on the next one.